For almost as long as I can remember, I've seen things that I shouldn't. Things that nobody else sees. I know that it started when I was young. I remember being in the hospital after I got hit by a car and seeing an old woman walking through the halls, screaming out to the doctors who wouldn't listen to her at the top of her lungs. She yelled over and over again, "Please, please, I don't feel well, please. Can anybody help me?" I remember those words clearly. I remember her tone, the desperation in her voice. I remember the fear. But most of all, I remember that when she walked past my door, she had the strangest blue aura around her. It surrounded her completely, and it shone so brightly I didn't know how everybody else didn't immediately notice, especially since all their auras were green. From my hospital bed, I watched her cling to passing doctors in the hall, tugging at their sleeves, but her hands seemed to pass right through them. She sobbed as she followed them like a lost, desperate puppy. But nobody spoke to her. Nobody paid any attention to her. Even when I asked the nurse about the old woman in the hall, I remember that she just frowned. Asked me, "What old woman?" As if she couldn't hear her crying just down the hall at that very moment. It wasn't until later that I figured out that I was the only one who could see some people that I can see. It's the aura that tells me who's visible and who's invisible. Most people and animals have a green aura, and everyone can see them. But the people with the blue aura, they only appear for me. Sometimes they notice that I can see them. Sometimes they talk to me. But I usually don't answer, since nobody else can see them. If I talk to them, other people will probably just assume I'm talking to myself, and I'd prefer not to have people think I'm crazy. See, it didn't take long before I figured out that the people with the blue aura are already dead. I mean, they don't always know it, but the blue aura always gives them away. You'd think being able to see ghosts would probably be more interesting than it actually is. Like, maybe I could use that skill to solve murders or something. Well, you try telling people that you can see ghosts. See how far you get. Nobody believes you. And of the ghosts I've met over the past 10 or so years, none of them have been murder victims as far as I can tell. Most of them are people who probably aren't even ready to move on yet. They follow some of their loved ones around, or they wander, barely interacting with the living. I mean, I don't see a lot of ghosts either. Sometimes I might even go a full year or so without noticing a blue aura. Then one day I'll be at school and I'll see somebody's dead family member checking in on them. Honestly, I think the most excitement I've ever got from my little ability was in 9th grade, when Cheryl Bush's mother passed away, and I spotted her shadowing her daughter around. She seemed to be able to do little things to try and help her out, but mostly she just sort of spent time with her, even if Cheryl couldn't see her. Once she noticed me staring at her and asked if I could see her. I didn't say anything, but I still nodded. Then I just went about my day. After that, I'd trade a respectful nod with the late Miss Bush every now and then until eventually she stopped appearing. I assumed that when she was content that her daughter would be okay, she didn't feel the need to stick around anymore. As ghost encounter stories go, that's about as mundane as you can get. For that particular experience in mind, you can imagine that I didn't quite get how people could be afraid of ghosts. I mean, sure, maybe there are a couple out there that could fuck you up, but I've literally never seen one. That said, some of the things that I see aren't ghosts. I don't know what they are. I've only ever seen one before. One thing that I can't explain, but it's something that I'll never forget. I was in 10th grade. I remember it was just after gym class, and I was heading to the locker room to get changed, and as soon as I got in there, I froze. There was something waiting for us there. Something just sitting casually in one of the benches as if it belonged in there. It looked like a person with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. But that was where the similarities between it and human beings ended. The surface of its skin was smooth and glassy. I could see my reflection, and the reflection of the other boys around me in what I assumed was its face, along with most of its body. The curves of its limbs and torso distorted everything, but the face was perfectly mirror-like. It sat still, but I could still see enough subtle movement to let me know that it was alive, that it was aware. I could see its chest rising and falling as it breathed, and I could hear raspy, metallic breaths. "Jason, you alright?" The voice of one of my friends snapped me out of the trance that I was in. I hadn't realized I'd been standing stock still, staring at an empty corner, and I was starting to get a few weird looks. Yeah, I'm fine. I thought I saw something. I mumbled a little sheepishly before finding somewhere else to change. As I moved, I could have sworn that the face of whatever it was that was sitting in the corner followed me, as if it was tracking my movements. I couldn't have dressed myself fast enough or gotten out of the goddamn locker room fast enough. Even though the thing had no eyes, I could feel it watching me. My heart was racing, and as I left the locker room behind and tore over to my locker to put my gym clothes away and get ready for my next period, I hadn't even made it halfway down the hall when I looked back and noticed that it was following me. Standing amongst the throng of moving students who moved around it without noticing it, the mirror man was there. I could see my face reflected in his, and I could feel my pulse starting to race as his head tilted slightly, as if he were waiting for me to do something interesting. I turned away and I just kept walking, trying to make a point not to look back, hoping like hell that maybe he'd just lose interest in me. No such luck. By the time I got to my next class, he was already there. He was standing quietly in a corner, still watching me and standing stock still. I couldn't help but steal a glance at him, and as I did, I noticed that he'd changed ever so slightly. His gaze was off of me for a moment, and he seemed to be looking at my teacher, who was standing at the front of the class taking attendance. I could see the smooth surface of the mirror man's body shifting and changing. My teacher for that class, Mr. Coulson, always wore a neatly pressed black suit, and the mirror man's body now reflected it. It almost looked as if he was wearing the suit, and in a few more moments, he was. His smooth face turned towards me again, reflecting me sitting at my desk. And though he had no eyes, I knew that he was staring at me, waiting for me to make a move. I just remained frozen to my seat and dead silent. I didn't even notice it when Mr. Coulson called my name. "Jason Dryden?" His voice made me jolt a little bit, and I looked over at him. His gaze was stern and a little disapproving. I managed a sheepish smile before quietly uttering, "Here." Coulson stared at me with a quiet frustration before moving on. I kept my head down and quietly got ready for class, trying to ignore the mirror man as he stared at me. It wasn't easy. He was there for my next and last class of the day as well, waiting for me in a corner, just like before. His appearance had changed slightly again as well. One of the kids in the classroom was one of those douchebags who waxed poetic about women and wore a trilby hat wherever he went. I didn't know his name, but I'd seen him around. That same hat appeared on the mirror man's head as he lifted a hand to inspect it and straightened it, as if he was genuinely perplexed by what was on his head. He looked at me again, as if to confirm that I was watching him. I was trying not to make it obvious. I didn't know if I was succeeding or not. He stared at me, just like before, and I couldn't wait for the bell to ring. As soon as class was over, I made a beeline for my locker, grabbed my bag, and got out of school as fast as I could. Home was just a short walk through the park away, but it still seemed impossibly far. I tried not to look behind me as I walked, but once I'd gotten off the school grounds and was in the quiet space between the fence-off backyards and the suburban houses and the vacant patch of forest that they backed into, I could hear the footsteps on the pavement behind me. I felt my skin crawl a little before finally deciding that I just had to look over my shoulder. I hoped it would just be some other kid heading home after another long, shitty day of school. But no such luck. The mirror man stood behind me. He'd acquired an umbrella now and held it open, despite the weather only being overcast. Autumn leaves drifted off the trees behind me as he stared at me, and I finally stopped and let myself look at him. For it felt like hours we just stared at each other. Me and the impossible being that only I seemed to be able to see. A being with no aura. Something that was, as far as I knew, impossible. "What the hell do you want from me?" I demanded, trying to sound tough. I didn't even know if that thing could speak. "You see me," the voice said. It had a strange echo to it and seemed completely androgynous. "I see you," I replied. "Now what do you want?" "It's been so long since someone has seen me. Do you like my outfit?" Seriously, that's what it was asking? This fucking thing stalked me for half the day and it was asking if I liked its outfit? Still frustrated as I was, I kept myself from insulting it. "Yeah, it's cool." "Cool," the voice repeated. I could hear a low chuckle. The figure's shoulders shook as if it were laughing. "Thank you. It has been so many years since anyone has noticed me. Thank you. You've warmed my heart on this cold autumn day. Perhaps I could offer you something? What is it that you desire?" Now I'm not exactly an expert on mythology or anything, but I've been on Tumblr. I know creepy fae shit when I hear it. Maybe it expected me to ask for love or something. I didn't know what, but as friendly as he seemed, I wasn't about to start trusting something like him. "Please, there must be something you want. We can make a trade, an exchange between friends. A gift for a gift. Wouldn't that be nice?" His head tilted to the side slightly, and in the reflection of his face, I could see my own, offering a warm smile. I took a step backwards. I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I should go." I turned to leave, but as I did, I saw him waiting on the path ahead of me. "I insist," he replied. "Please, what is it that you desire most?" An Xbox?" I just blurted it out, trying to think of something to make him get out of my way. In hindsight, that may not have been such a great idea. His head tilted to the other side now. "Xbox," he repeated. "Xbox." The lips of my reflection on his face moved as he spoke the word. Then the smile returned. It seemed more real now. Similar to how the hat and the coat had seemed more real on him than they had before, his face no longer seemed like a blank reflection. I could see my own face there now. "A trade for a trade," he repeated, and the voice sounded a lot like mine. "Thank you. There are some things that can't be borrowed, Jason." Like that. He was gone. There was another gust of autumn leaves, and I was alone on the trail with a slow, sinking feeling growing in my stomach. There was a package waiting for me when I got home. Brand new Xbox Series X. Looks like it got delivered to the wrong address. I didn't tell my parents about it, and I hid the box in the trash. I suppose the mirror man delivered on his side of the bargain. But it's been a few days now as I look at the smooth, glassy surface of my hands. I really can't bring myself to care about what I've been given. I mean, I could fake being myself for now. No matter how much I change, people don't seem to notice. They don't seem to notice what's wrong with me. In fact, I can't help but feel as if they notice me less and less now. In fact, I've noticed that people only seem to speak to me now when they mistake me for someone else. After I borrow their clothes or their hairstyle. Last night, my own mother didn't even acknowledge me until I borrowed her hair, and even then, it didn't last. I need something more. Something that I can't borrow. Something that make people see me again. A new face. I don't want to be forgotten. I don't want to wait for someone like me to see me, just to be seen again, just to be acknowledged. No, I'll fix this. I think I know just what I need to do. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and thank you for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's podcast, and thank you for clicking the thumbs up, the subscribe, the follow, the bell, the whatever helpful thing there is on such a platform. I want to tell you about one quick thing before we say goodbye for the evening, and that's going to be about the MrCreepyPasta plush! The plush is only available for a limited time, so if you guys head over to makeship.com, then you guys are able to get this MrCreepyPasta plush. It's super cool, it glows in the dark, which is really cool, and he's super soft and cuddly. So it's makeship.com/products/MrCreepyPasta-plush. Or you know what's easier? Makeship.com. There you go. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who is supporting me on Patreon. A huge thank you to patrons, such as Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Brian Arce, Bobby Karman, Stephanie Butler, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, William King, Heather McDonald, Reaper61167, Alex the Sandwich, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Ness69420, aisodoehtraed with 2 exclamation points, Nessie, Ronnie Hansen, Bardohawk764, Melancholy Corpse, Ferb, Harley, Billy Morrow, Madam Skullbunny, Sashi Sazaku, Grizzly Olsen.pro, Kayden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, MyBodySoundsLikeRiceKrispys, Ashwood, Lord of the Weeds, Jay, Miss Exandra, Mr. Unsettling Spaghetti, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Azarine Fox, Fried Chicken 12, Freddy Krueger, Pie Nanny, Michael Scarborough, Infernal One, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Nels, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nina Smith, Nico Cayo, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trey Smiles, and Corey Kensham. Thank you guys so much, so much for being a part of the Patreon and helping me keep the lights on and helping me get exclusive stories and everything that we do on the channel here. It really means so much to me. I hope you all have a very happy Halloween and sweet dreams.